delighted to welcome on stage now Paul Johnston, Director General of the Irish Universities Association, to deliver our opening address. Welcome, Paul. Good to see you.
Thank you very much, Claire. In my previous job, I think the last time I met Claire, I was being grilled about British government policy on Gaza on the Tonight programme. So this is a much easier and a happier gig, but no less important. In fact, a very important occasion. I'm delighted to welcome you all today. Thank you so much for braving this delightful Dublin winter weather with which we're all thoroughly fed up. Never mind lifelong learning, it seems like lifelong rain. Anyway, delighted to welcome you here today on behalf of the Irish Universities Association. Our event today is intended to mark a significant milestone for the MicroCreds project. But I'm keen to use my few minutes at the start to put the project in, if you like, a broader context of the evolution of the Irish higher education system, particularly as regards lifelong learning and the future skills agenda. As Director General of the IUA since the end of last year, I've already been able to see firsthand the culmination of over 5 years of hard work by the MicroCreds project team. And in the short time I've had to learn about and understand the project and the concept, it's clear that the scale, the ambition, and the impact are substantial. From the outset, the MicroCreds project was conceived as what you might in the jargon, and coming into this world I realise it has its own set of jargon, you might call a system-level disruptor. It set out with a mission to reimagine how people of all ages could engage with and access formal accredited learning. Our role, the IUA's role in this, has been to provide leadership, including thought leadership, to provide coordination at a practical level, and to provide coherence, including conceptually, across our university's partners, ensuring that innovation in learning through MicroCreds did not happen in isolation, but in a way that could be scaled, trusted, and sustained. This was groundbreaking work, bringing together different institutions with different backgrounds, the worlds of enterprise, delighted to see them recognised and represented here, and policymakers, to develop and sustain a shared vision for flexible and accredited learning. I think it's true to say that few countries could point to the establishment of a nationally coordinated approach that combines such clear definitions, quality assurance, credit alignment, and enterprise engagement at this scale. And even fewer countries could demonstrate delivery across multiple universities in a way that both respects the institutional autonomy of each while building system coherence and agility across the sector. So MicroCreds has positioned Ireland as a leader internationally in this field. And from my meetings with business leaders in particular since joining the IUA, this concept of the university enterprise collaboration has emerged as a key partnership for the present, but also for the future. And the projects we're developing to ensure that we can meet Ireland's emerging skills needs across the spectrum of what our universities offer and will offer in the future, from undergraduate degree to master's programmes to lifelong learning in all its forms, including micro-credentials, is clearly a purpose of increasing relevance. And so as we look ahead to an ever more complex and challenging world, where a knowledge-driven economy with a highly educated workforce will be ever more crucial, the case for continuing and strengthening our commitment to upskilling and lifelong learning should, I hope, be clear. Recent evidence, in particular from IBEC's 2025 skills survey, indicates that skills shortages have moved from being perhaps a peripheral concern to a strategic risk for the Irish economy as a whole. And as competition nationally and internationally for talent intensifies, employers expect such skill constraints, unless decisively addressed, to place increasing pressure on productivity and growth, particularly as digitalisation and AI adoption accelerate even more. So the development of MicroCreds and the infrastructures to support that seems to us to be a crucial response to this part of the wider skills challenge. Beyond the labour market, MicroCreds also play a critical role in supporting social cohesion. By enabling people to adapt with confidence, to update their skills, to remain connected to learning throughout their working lives, MicroCreds have an important, if you like, protective function in mitigating the worst aspects of and the worst impacts of digitalisation and automation, and in supporting resilient individuals, communities and workplaces in a period of rapid change and uncertainty. And against this backdrop, I think universities have a critical role to play as long-term partners in the skills system, supporting continuous upskilling and reskilling throughout what are likely to be ever longer and more multifaceted working lives and indeed beyond. So if a recovering diplomat can become some sort of practitioner in the higher education system, there's hope for all of us. Alongside technical expertise, lifelong learning provision must also and increasingly prioritise what you might call transversal skills, such as critical and analytical thinking, communication, negotiating, and building interpersonal capability, which are essential in navigating rapid technological change and in an increasingly complex information environment. And again, that's a message that I've heard very much from business leaders in my first few months in this job, how important those transversal skills, which perhaps people of my generation almost learnt as a byproduct of our university time, to have those consciously and purposely taught to equip people for the future. The pace of technological change, demographic shifts, and global competition mean that initial education, first time and full time in the jargon, alone will no longer be sufficient for our social and economic needs. A resilient economy and society will depend on our ability to support people to learn throughout their lives, to adapt and to move both within and between roles and sectors. And in that context, MicroCreds have shown how a coordinated, policy-enabled approach can strengthen Ireland's skills system and deepen engagement between higher education and enterprise. The project has a strong alignment with the Human Capital Initiative Pillar 3 goals of innovation and agility, directly responding to the call for new and flexible approaches in higher education to address future skills needs. And in developing MicroCreds, IA universities, the 7 of them, have worked closely with employers of all sizes, from SMEs to major multinationals, to design and deliver over 600 accredited micro-credentials courses aligned specifically to identified skills needs. This collaboration has supported tens of thousands of learners already in the workforce, enabling upskilling and reskilling in areas critical to competitiveness, productivity, and innovation. And importantly, has also demonstrated how universities can act as agile partners within the wider skills ecosystem when supported by clear direction and appropriate funding mechanisms. So today's event marks an important inflection point for MicroCreds and for university lifelong learning more broadly. Our universities have demonstrated that accredited micro-credentials can be delivered at scale with quality, coherence, and strong enterprise engagement across partner institutions. Looking ahead, the challenge now is transformation, sustaining and embedding micro-credentials as a core component of Ireland's lifelong learning infrastructure. This is an ambitious target. Scaling flexible provision will require extensive change to universities' operating models, as well as a step change in the wider funding and policy environment. MicroCreds has shown what is possible when policy, funding, and institutional leaderships are aligned. The challenge now, it seems to us, is to build on this foundation, to ensure that flexible learning continues to be supported, recognised, and valued, and that Ireland remains at the forefront of innovation and skills education, which will be a crucial part of Ireland remaining at the forefront of an international economy increasingly characterised by competition, by the challenge of geopolitics, but also by the opportunities of frontier knowledge and innovation. We're delighted to have DeFerris as our partners also in this area, and I'm delighted to see the Minister's emphasis on the skills agenda. We look forward to working with him, his department, and the Higher Education Authority and other partners as we look sustainably to support the development and uptake of lifelong learning. Getting incentives and rewards aligned and appropriate will be crucial to this enterprise. Through the HCI learner fee subsidy, we've seen the positive impact incentives can have on the ability for learners to engage with upskilling and for universities to deliver critical provision. However, we've also seen the disproportionate impact on learners on lower incomes and on employees in resource-constrained SMEs when these incentives are disrupted or their continuation is uncertain. So there's an important message there about the nature, the scale, the availability of funding and other forms of support. Addressing affordability and access pathways to learning through methods such as RPL will be critical to sustaining and scaling accessible and inclusive microcredentials into the future. In closing, I want to acknowledge the fantastic leadership shown by the IUA project team, David and Jules in particular, colleagues from across all our partner universities, enterprise contributors and policymakers who have supported this work and whose contributions and whose support will be equally necessary as we enter the next phase. MicroCreds has, I'm sure today's discussion will reveal, laid strong foundations for the future. I think it's now incumbent on all of us here today to ensure that the structures and the resources and the enthusiasm and the engagement are in place to ensure that the momentum continues in the years to come. Enjoy today's discussions. Thank you very much for coming.